5 people, including a woman known as the Ketamine Queen, face federal charges in a conspiracy that led to Friends star Matthew Perry's overdose death. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Matthew Perry has been very open about his struggle with addiction. He'd been to rehab many times over the years and spent millions trying to get and stay clean. He had even said he wanted to help others who were struggling with addiction. That's what he wanted his legacy to be, and maybe it will be. At the time that Perry died last October, he was receiving legitimate treatment for depression and anxiety by getting ketamine infusions at a doctor's office. But the U.S. attorney in Los Angeles says Perry wanted more than he was receiving. He had actually become addicted to ketamine, so he turned to other doctors who were willing to violate their oath to sell him ketamine to inject at home. The indictment says Dr. Mark Chavez and Dr. Salvador Placensia were ordering ketamine to supply Matthew Perry. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada laid out some of the things that Placensia said when he found out that Matthew Perry was interested in buying ketamine on the black market.
Defendant Placensia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply.
Derek Maltz is a former director of DEA Special Operations. Derek, your thoughts on these arrests in Matthew Perry's death?
So thank you for having me. Number one thought is I applaud the efforts of the law enforcement community to do such an efficient and effective investigation very quickly. They already have 3 guilty pleas. So I'm very excited about that. These are very tough cases, and I appreciate their work. But unfortunately, the criminal networks that are out there, including these dirty doctors and the Ketamine Queen, are going to take advantage of the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of people to make money, right? So it's about maximizing profits, just like I've talked about many times, the Mexican cartels. Well, these doctors get greedy as well. And this case clearly demonstrates that greed was way ahead of public safety, and it's really disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah, one of the most disturbing things to me in the indictment was the fact that Salvador Placensia, who is a doctor, and he has pleaded not guilty to the charges, but the documents say that he, instead of helping Matthew Perry, his question was, when he first heard about this, I wonder how much the moron will pay. And then,
right.
The U.S. attorney is saying they jacked up the price of this stuff, charging him like tenfold what this stuff, maybe even more than tenfold what it was actually valued at, just to make a quick buck off of somebody who was obviously desperate and spiraling, in Placencia's own words. So that part right there, to me, is really cruel. For people who are supposed to, take an oath of doing no harm.
Yes. So you're 100% correct. And this kind of tells the whole story. That's the exact quote that I focused in on when I've been asked questions on this case. That tells the whole story. Pure greed. Okay. And even doctors. Okay. So they should be held even more accountable because they know better, right? This guy, Matthew Perry, has been writing about his addiction. He needs help. And Angenette, that's part of the problem in this country. Mental illness, anxiety, depression is on the rise, and pain and suffering of people. So they're turning to drugs for help. But when they turn to professionals for help, they have to get the professional help. Unfortunately, again, it's all about the money. In this case, it was all about the money.
Kenny Imomasa, the assistant, I'm sure he actually cared for Matthew Perry. He worked for him for years and was his live-in assistant. But as his plea agreement noted, he knew about Matthew Perry's struggle with addiction. He had witnessed it, and he knew that what he was doing was wrong. He had no medical training. But he has pleaded guilty. I look at this case in the way that 3 people have already pleaded guilty and admitted culpability here. I'm thinking Kenny, when he found Matthew Perry in the hot tub after he admitted to injecting him 3 times that day with ketamine, he probably knew he screwed up big time and probably cooperated with the feds from the get-go and with the local law enforcement there in LA. because he knew he messed up and he knew he was caught. Do you think that he really is probably was the first one to fold here?
It certainly seems that way. I mean, obviously the guy realized the devastation of Matthew Perry is dead in the damn, hot tub. This is going to be huge national news, and the DEA is very experienced out there in Los Angeles, working with the LAPD and the Postal Service. So I'm sure they laid into him, and he probably did agree to do the right thing and come on board the team to make sure that this is cleaned up properly. So if that's the case, we make mistakes in life. It's like what we do about making the mistakes. But there's another part real quick I picked up on in this case, which was disturbing. So apparently the Ketamine Queen was also involved in another alleged death in 2019. And apparently, at one point, one of the family members approached the Ketamine Queen and talked about ketamine that killed her brother. And then she responded and she went to Google and asked Google, can ketamine be listed as a cause of death? So they're showing their intent. It's all about making money. And I hope in this case, the U.S. attorney who's done an amazing job, Mr. Estrada, I hope that they hold these people accountable to the full extent of the law.
Yeah, and that's what the documents say, that in 2019, she sold ketamine to somebody who died. We had covered that on a previous episode. And she's being held without bail right now. She's being detained. So the feds really have her in their sights. I mean, she's in some big trouble, even though she's pleaded not guilty to these charges. And it is very sad that 2019 death that they noted was not a wake-up call for her.
Yeah, and they found, I guess, about 80 vials of ketamine in her house during the search warrants and additional drugs. So, yeah, she's going to be pleading guilty soon, too, in my opinion, based on my experience. And one other thing I wanted to know, too, which I'm not sure you're aware of, but because there's so many, overdose and fentanyl poisonings that have been happening around the country leading to death, the DEA has already had about 500 of these investigations. And they call it OD Justice is the initiative. But it all started because of the Los Angeles law enforcement community coming together, putting together best practices on how to effectively go after these death investigations, which is different for the DEA, believe me. So they've done a spectacular job. So I can't thank them enough.
No doubt. It's so sad. And we're going to keep an eye on it. Derek Maltz, thank you so much.
Thank you for the tremendous work.